You are listening to the Keep the Weight Off podcast with Dr. Angela
and Marchelle,
episode number 122.
Welcome to the Keep the Weight Off podcast, where we bust all the dieting myths and discover not just how to lose weight, but more importantly, how to keep it off. We go way beyond the food, and we use science and psychology to give you strategies that work. And now your host, Dr. Angela Zechmann.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast this week. I hope everyone listening in the U.S. had a very happy 4th of July. Many of us were up pretty late watching fireworks displays. You know what, Marchelle, I noticed that as I get older, I'm just not as thrilled about staying up that late. I don't know about you.
I totally understand. Me too.
It's like, especially if I have to get up and go to work the next day, like I'm probably, unless I'm someplace very special, I'm probably not going to stay up for the fireworks. But when I was younger, I always did. So I don't know. I always loved the 4th of July. I love the fireworks, but
yeah. This holiday is pretty special to my husband and I because this is our birthday week. Our birthday is on the 6th.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So we
Happy
always
birthday.
do something. Yeah. We always thank you. We always do something, pretty big for this week. We usually go on a big trip. This year is the first year that we're not doing that. I'm actually going to be working on my birthday.
Oh, yes. And you are. And, our listeners might not know that you and your husband were born on the exact same day. Not the same year,
we are.
But the same
Not
day.
the same year, same date. We are. So we've been sharing a birthday for about 22 years.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
I know. I know.
Wow. Wonderful. So birthday celebrations at the office. We'll
Yay.
see. I hope somebody's planning something.
All right. Me too. No.
Yeah, it's important. No. All right. So, that kind of brings us into a really good topic because this is a challenge that everybody can relate to. And I had a woman last week. She came into the clinic. She's been doing super well. And she told me that she was super nervous. And this is pretty common when people are doing well, when they start thinking about events. So she's got a lot going on and she's starting to get a little bit nervous because she had 2 different trips coming up for events. One of them was going to be a wedding and another trip was going to be a family reunion. And, summer is the season for all of these kinds of events. And so, think about you as a listener. What kinds of stuff do you have going on in the summer? Maybe there's a class reunion or a family reunion or some sort of event. And so you're like, oh my gosh, I do fine when I'm by myself in my house. But what about when I'm with other people? What happens? So I really, really understand these concerns. I remember in the beginning when I was trying to be healthy and I was avoiding eating sugar and flour, I was super, super concerned about what others might think and how I was going to avoid all that temptation. And so I really felt for her. And so I wanted to talk about this because navigating these social events can be really challenging when you're trying to avoid sugar and flour, because remember, it's ubiquitous and it's everywhere. So that's what we're going to focus on today.
Oh my gosh. I totally understand this. For me, it's harder in the beginning, but also for me, it really depends on like the company that I'm around, because it's really a lot harder for me if I'm around, close family members, like, my mother, for instance, because everybody knows I love to eat her baking.
Right.
And she, and that's her way of showing love. So in those situations, it's harder for me to know whether or not to, eat the cookies or eat the Christmas, stuff, or because it's just because of the relationships I have. It's easier for me if I'm, at an event where I don't know the people as well.
Right.
But it really depends on, who I'm around, whether or not, it's more of a challenge for me.
Mm-hmm.
So
that does matter.
Yeah. And even not wanting to feel like left out or, different than everybody else. So we've talked about this on a couple podcasts back, when I went to California, this was a challenge for me. So I'm glad we're talking about this today.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that I want all of us to remember is that you're not alone. Everybody struggles.
You're not alone.
That really helps me to always remember not alone. So A lot of people are choosing to live healthier lifestyles these days, which is always a good thing. And they are making the choice to not eat the cake and not eat the bread. And because these are such socially acceptable drugs, notice how I said that? Drugs.
Yes.
I saw a Facebook post the other day, this is a little aside, that had just a whole picture of donuts, McDonald's, soda, cookies, cakes, all of this, chips, nachos, and the Facebook post said, the minute I started to think of these things as recreational drugs, everything changed.
Oh my gosh, that's important.
Recreational drugs. So they are recreational, socially acceptable drugs. So everybody feels a little awkward about saying no to the cookies or the cake or whatever it is. And I got to tell you, I'm pretty practiced at this by now. I've been doing this for decades, and I still feel awkward at times. I still feel really awkward.
Exactly. And this is a topic that comes up so often. Honestly, it doesn't even matter how long, you've been on this journey. There are just these times when it becomes a challenge. And we do, a lot of patients come in, and this is the time when they get off track. Is these kinds of events or holidays or vacations and they're coming back, saying, I had a hard time saying no to, during this event. And so I ate the cake. So, you feel awkward. So we need to, how do you get over feeling awkward about this kind of stuff?
Well, it helps to acknowledge in the beginning that it's just going to feel weird.
Exactly.
You're just going to feel weird. Change is really uncomfortable. And especially when it means going against the grain in social settings like this. So you might worry that you might stick out. You might worry that that everybody's going to be talking about you, that they're going to be, that you're going to have all of this weird attention drawn to you. Or like you've mentioned a few times, you might worry that you might offend somebody, right?
Yeah. So my feeling mostly like in the last experience that I had when, I was on my vacation was I felt like they were going to think that I thought that I was better than them, for being picky or, eating differently or, you know what I mean? I'm not sure if you've ever had that experience, but that was like the first thing that came to me is I just thought that they were going to think like, oh, well, I don't eat that and you guys do. So I'm better than you. So I don't know why I felt like that, but I did.
So, I get that. I totally get that. It's like, okay, so they're going to think that I'm stuck up, I'm in my high horse with my healthy nutrition. And you guys are just going to keep eating junk and being stupid.
Like I was being judgmental or, so just separating myself, away from the crowd. And and I felt awkward.
Yeah. So it's just going to be awkward. It will be awkward in the beginning. And, the interesting thing is that it's fine to feel awkward and it's fine to feel anxious. It doesn't feel good, but it's normal. And so the more you try to fight feeling awkward or anxious, then the worse it gets, right? So just plan to feel awkward and anxious. Try not to worry about what other people are going to think. Just recognize that as you practice more, it gets easier. I promise. It gets easier with practice. So expect uncomfortable feelings. You're not going to die from feeling a little bit awkward. Remind yourself that you want to be thriving in a healthy, vibrant body. You don't want to be walking around with hypertension and diabetes and obesity and joint pain and everything else that is the result of eating crap food. And so you want to live a long, happy, healthy life. And these are highly addictive recreational drugs that you're dealing with. So, and it's entirely possible that nobody else really understands it, but you do, right?
Right.
And so if you keep reminding yourself of these things, that can make it a little bit easier to make the choices that you need to make to support yourself.
I do believe that it gets easier with practice. I do. I think so.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, regardless of what other people around you might be thinking, your health truly is your personal business.
Right.
So you're totally in control of your choices. No one gets to decide for you what will or will not go in your mouth. It's that simple. it's actually none of their business.
It is not.
So
it is none of their business. It's like that feeling of like peer pressure. When you're a teenager, it's that same kind of feeling. I think so. It does get easier. Just say no, and so it gets easier as you practice. So that's kind of the way I think about it.
Yeah. So for our listeners, this has happened to me before. Auntie tells you she baked special cookies for this event and you have to have one, right? Because so then you're like, oh, you just very politely say, oh, thanks, Auntie, but I'm sure everyone is going to love them. And then you leave them on the platter. And if she asks you why you're not having one, you just politely say, well, I'm working on my health, but thank you. They're really beautiful. And so you can appreciate the beauty of this without actually pouring toxins into your body. Sometimes just saying no thank you will work wonders. You don't have to justify your choices to anyone. Or if you want, you could just simply say, I've been feeling so much better since I quit eating sugar and flour. I've just been avoiding it and I feel a lot better. And I'm just going to stick with it. Something along those lines.
Sometimes what I've done, and this is in a place where I feel confident, is I've, like during Christmas events. So that's always what comes to me is like Christmas events. Because that's when everybody's doing the baking, and the trading of the cookies and all that. So what I've done, when I've been in a secure place is I just take them and I just gift them to somebody else, or I just get rid of them. Just because sometimes to save other people's feelings, I guess. I don't think that's probably the best choice, but sometimes that's what I've had to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, the interesting thing is that over time, everyone just gets used to you making different choices, and they come to a point where they just sort of accommodate that. And at some point in time, you'll stand there as an example and they'll want to join you, right?
Yeah.
So after a while, people just stop bothering you about it. Okay. So I remember, I think it was last summer. Was it last summer? I was up in Minnesota. It was hot and everybody went out for ice cream.
Oh, yeah. I remember this.
I didn't have any ice cream and nobody said anything to me. And I just sat there and enjoyed the company of all of my relatives. And you don't have to eat the food to enjoy their company. Right?
No. So that's in that situation, that's easier to navigate. The harder situations for me, I think, are when like Auntie bakes special gifts for you, or, when it's more focused on you, like my mother, like I said, my mother always comes up because she will bake something, especially for, for me when I come there. And that's when it's harder to figure out what to do, I guess. So, so that, there's all different kinds of situations that we have to navigate.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you're in a social situation, you can easily, or not so easily, with a little bit of feeling of awkwardness, avoid eating stuff. If somebody actually gifts you with something, and what you can do is anticipate this in advance. So, for example, if you know that your mother's going to be making cookies at Christmas, you can, in advance, say to her, you know what? Like, I'm feeling really, really good that I'm not eating sugar and flour anymore. And I'm thinking about the Christmas holidays that are coming up. And I know you love to bake me cookies, but I'm wondering if this year we could do something different.
Right. You're right. Ahead of time, being proactive. Yeah. Okay. There's another situation though, that I wanted to bring up. And this is, what if the food that's being served, like, the pastries or whatever, are so good and they're your favorite and you really, really, really want them. So, that feeling is like overwhelming because you're in the situation where you're like, oh my gosh, that is my favorite, apple pie that, Grandma Betsy baked, and you really, really want it. So what do you do in that kind of situation?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because had I not prepared myself ahead of time at the ice cream thing last summer,
right?
Like, I really love ice cream.
Yeah.
And it is totally tempting, So you want to think about having a game plan ahead of time. So what you want to do is to, first of all, make sure that you don't attend an event where you know that there's likely to be the apple pie. You don't want to go hungry.
Right.
So sometimes what I do, remember how Dr. Ashley Gearhart was talking about how when we haven't eaten, our brain gets an even bigger dopamine hit from these processed
Yep.
addictive foods.
Yeah.
So that makes it all the harder. So you want to make sure that you don't arrive hungry. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll eat healthy food ahead of time
Yeah, good
so that I'm
idea.
not starving when I get there. And that can really help cut down on cravings. If it's possible, I'll bring something with me like deviled eggs, or I love to make beautiful caprese salads for functions, or a vegetable platter with hummus, just something that's a special food that can be dressed up and made pretty, but it's also nourishing. And so then I can know that there are healthier options available. And it's interesting because in my experience, everyone appreciates having some healthier options at these kinds of functions. So it's not all just bread and chips and burgers and hot dogs and cookies and crap food, right? So it's a way to contribute to the event and ensure that there's something there that aligns with your health goals. And then if there's the apple pie and your brain is like, you might decide ahead of time, well, if there's apple pie, I'm going to have a couple bites or I'm going to have a piece of apple pie. Make that decision in advance and then be prepared for cravings later. And don't take any of it home.
Okay. Right. For sure.
Yeah. But, it's possible that you might decide ahead of time that you're not going to have it, like I did with the ice cream. I just made the decision ahead of time. And it did feel awkward.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to do ice cream. And I've done that on quite a few occasions now where people have said, we want to go out for ice cream. And I'm just like, okay, great. I just go and I sit and I just talk to people. And that's the other piece of it is like these types of events, you want to really focus on who you're going to be with. Like focus on the event's purpose. So if you're going to a family reunion, for example, like there are all of these people that you haven't seen in forever. Like focus on them and focus on the conversations and learn about them instead of focusing on the food. Or if it's a wedding, like focus on the couple and focus on all the fun of the wedding itself without spending so much time thinking about the food. Like the food's actually a really small part of any gathering anyway. It's like, how much time do we spend eating?
Yeah,
right?
That's a really great idea. And I was just kind of thinking like sometimes when I've been at in situations where I feel kind of awkward just being in the situation, I've tended to focus on the food more as a way to just sort of, tap out or sort of isolate from the people.
Yeah.
So that's also something to think about. Because I was just thinking that I was like, why do I focus on the food so much? And sometimes it's for that reason, is just to separate myself because I don't know the people that well, or I don't you know what I'm saying? So it is something to think about ahead of time, and maybe I need to journal on something like that because that just sort of popped up. So it's something I need to probably focus on more.
That's a really great point because so many of us can feel so awkward in these social situations that we can find ourselves really busy, over at the proverbial punch bowl.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like, let me just go get a drink, and get myself out of this. Yeah. So you have to kind of do some advanced talking to yourself and some advanced journaling. And, the interesting thing is that the more you get to know yourself, the more comfortable you are sharing yourself authentically with other people.
Right.
Right. And so you're not so worried about what other people are going to think, and you're not so worried about being judged because you feel the more you get to know yourself and the more comfortable you are with yourself, the less these kinds of events can trigger those kinds of things.
Yeah,
so
that's
sense. Another really, and that's a lot of the work that we do in Empowered Weight Loss is we really help you. So Empowered Weight Loss is the online program that I teach.
Right.
We really help you get to know yourself better and develop a stronger sense of confidence and a stronger sense of identity and value in who you are as a person, so that it doesn't really matter what event you're at or where you are, you're walking around with this sense of confidence about yourself. And so you're much less likely to go over to the punch bowl or stand by the food and eat the chips because you're so nervous or worried about what other people might be thinking about you.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. It's a really good point. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
So there's one other thing I want to talk about. Well, maybe not. There is definitely one thing I want to talk about, and that is all of this thinking ahead of time. Our primitive brain does not like that. Our primitive brain rebels against all of this. Because remember, our primitive brain wants convenience. It wants its dopamine hit. And so you may have thoughts pop up as you're thinking about an event. Thoughts might pop up like, geez, this is just way too much work. Like, I don't want to have to think so hard about all of this. What is the big deal?
Oh,
Why do I have to think so much about all of this?
That's
right?
kind of funny because I was thinking that.
Yeah.
I bet you a lot of people that are listening might be thinking that too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just about the
so
dopamine
you want to be
hit.
you want to be expecting those kinds of thoughts because your primitive brain doesn't like the idea of you planning ahead. The primitive brain doesn't care in the least about your long-term health, and it doesn't want you to feel any discomfort at all. So, but the thing you want to remember, discomfort is the price that you pay to achieve your dreams. I'm going to say that again because it's so important. Discomfort is the price you pay to achieve your dreams. So if you want to be healthy in this crazy food environment, you have to do a lot of extra work, and it's not going to feel the least bit comfortable. So it really helps to expect that from the very beginning and expect your primitive brain to rebel.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I wouldn't even probably thought about, just what my part in, being nervous and that, taking me into, eating things that I don't want to eat. I probably would have never even thought about that if, I hadn't been doing work with you because it's very easy to just not notice that. So, so you do have to do a lot of inner work and a lot of journaling and getting to know yourself better. If you do want to be successful at this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. There's one more thing I wanted to ask you about, which this was big for me in the past. It's not so much anymore. But what about the alcohol? I know that sometimes, sometimes that it can lower inhibitions and it can affect our decision making, or, we can overdrink and just that in itself can be overloading on the carbs. So what about the alcohol?
Yep, that's a great point. So alcohol will cloud your judgment. There's no question. What happens when you're drinking is it turns off the executive brain, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that's very concerned about your long-term health, and it allows the primitive brain more leeway. So we're at risk for making choices that we might not make when we're clear-headed and more sober.
Right.
Alcohol can also trigger cravings for sugary foods and high-carb stuff. So you'll be eyeing Auntie's cookies with lust in your heart.
This is true.
Or the pie. So if you choose to drink, I would recommend that you be very careful about it. So you want to pace yourself. So especially if you're at a summer event, drink water first. Get yourself very well hydrated. And then alternate an alcoholic beverage with more water. Okay? So get the water down, get yourself well hydrated, have a drink, and then drink water. And I think if you're outside and it's hot, drink at least 2 water drinks or diet drinks for every alcoholic beverage that you drink. Because it is so easy to drink the alcoholic beverages because you're thirsty. And then the next thing you know, you're like totally plastered and very drunk, and you're not going to make the right choices in that case. So be super, super careful with alcohol, especially if it's hot outside.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, I agree. And thanks for those insights, Dr. Angela. So it's really about striking a balance, isn't it?
It is. Balance, planning ahead, self-compassion, really thinking about your identity and who you are as a person and valuing your choices. Those are all the keys in navigating these types of social events and still maintaining your health goals. So remember, everyone's journey is unique, and it's okay to make choices that support your well-being, even if they differ from everybody around you.
Right.
Your health is worth it. Like, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything, right? So just make sure that you do what's right for you and try not to worry about what everybody else is thinking about you.
That's true.
Does that make sense?
You got this.
Yeah, you got this. So for all of you who are listening, if you've enjoyed this podcast, I have a request. And that is, could you please spread the word? So all you have to do is take a screenshot of this podcast. I'm assuming you're listening on your phone. Easy to take a screenshot. Or if you're listening online, you can do a screenshot and then just share it on your social media accounts and say, hey, everybody, this was a great podcast. If you want to know how to navigate social events during the summertime, we all need to know how to stay healthy while we're doing this, while we're navigating these social events and weddings and class reunions and family reunions. And so share it on your social. And always remember that you're never alone in this journey. If you join us in Empowered Weight Loss, you'll get even more support. Keep making choices that align with your health goals. Okay? So that's all for this week, and we will see you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Hey, if you really want to lose weight and keep it off for good, your next step is to sign up for Dr. Angela's free weight loss course, where you're going to learn everything you need to get started on your weight loss journey the right way. Just head over to journeybeyondweightloss.com/free course to sign up. Also, it would be awesome if you could take a few moments and write a review on iTunes. Thanks, and we'll see you in Journey Beyond Weight Loss.